Ravenlok. Ravenlok is sort of the weird game to cover for me, as it's, well, kind of short for one and not very story heavy. But to talk about Ravenlok, we have to sort of also look at some source material for it, which is Alice in Wonderland. Because I think to really enjoy Ravenlok requires a base understanding of Alice in Wonderland and like sort of the covering there. So we'll be talking about that for a little bit as well. If you don't know, Alice in Wonderland is the very classical children's adventure where a young girl named Alice falls into a hole that transfers her to another fantastical world that has been taken over by darkness, and it's now her job to fix it, right? And Ravenlock takes much the same approach. You recently moved with your parents out in the countryside. You have nothing to do, there's no friends around, you're bored. So after helping your parents a little bit out throughout the house, you learned that your auntie, she was pretty interested in mirrors, and in particular there's a pretty big mirror in the back of the barn, which you go and check out. That lets you teleport to another world where you are called the Ravenlok. There's a prophecy about how you will defeat the queen and free the land. And that's pretty much how Ravenlok starts. From there, you are gonna go through a wacky and wild adventure throughout 3 different areas or main areas and then a castle. And it's all pretty fun. It starts out with you just having basic attacks, and as you play you get more abilities and so on, but we'll cover that more in depth later. For now, let's focus on the story parts of it, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. Now, talking about the gameplay of Ravenlock is sort of funny, because I know some people call it a Souls-like because it has a very similar mechanic to bonfires, but it's really not. It's a much more closer to the old God of War games, where you have a fixed camera behind you, you have some movement mechanics, you have 4 abilities, and you have your basic attack, and that's it. When it comes to Souls-like comparisons in general, they also usually taken as being really hard. Ravenlock really isn't that bad once you first get into it. It's incredibly easy, honestly, as most of the game can be beaten and will be beaten by you just spam clicking your abilities and your basic attack, and that's it. When it comes to, the general game, it's not that it's bad because of it per se. I don't mind it being easy, it's not that, it's just sort of on the short side, which for some people can be a turn off. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal for me personally, as it is only 4 hours long. I 100%ed all of Ravenlock in 4 hours, and that's the average time apparently on like Xbox Game Pass's tracker. And that's fine, that's a fine amount of time, but it's also just hard to, say go out and buy this when it's not longer, when you can get stuff that's longer. What you do get in those 4 hours though is an incredibly fun experience, as even if the game is short and basic, a lot of the world is super interesting. Because sure, the story isn't super duper deep. It's not gonna be your next God of War that's gonna make you emotionally sit on your edge and cry. But it is definitely an interesting world to look at. Because from a visual perspective, Ravenlock is really unique, as it takes the Alice in Wonderland, Tim Burton sort of style, and compose it with voxel graphics, which is something I haven't seen before ever, really. And it's seen throughout the entirety of the game. It doesn't matter where you go, you can see the sort of weird Alice in Wonderland inspired environments, but they're voxely, which is such a contrast because it is extremely cute when you see the voxely stuff, but it's not supposed to be. I have found times where I've been looking at this like mutant looking ass and I don't, aww, that's so cute, you're such a cute little thing, right? Because it has that voxel aesthetic and it's not super scary, it's sort of in the opposite area of it. And I think cuteness is sort of something that the game does lean into, with the fact that you can collect hats to wear that provide no gameplay advantage whatsoever. They're purely cosmetical, but they are super cute. In addition to that, I think it's also worth saying that the game, when it comes to equipment, is simple. You have nothing you can like loot, and all your upgrades cost money, and that's it. Just a base currency, there's nothing more to it. Now, when it comes to the presentation, there are multiple things we need to look at, not just the visuals. We've touched a little bit on the visuals, and I'll just again mention that I think they're great. However, I think it's also important to mention the sound design, because the sound design isn't half bad either. It actually is pretty good and hits some really good themes, and I'll be playing one for you right now for the next 30 seconds, and I personally really like it. As you can hear, it's pretty alright, and the way that things come together in Ravenlok really just enhances it. Because there's never a soundtrack that feels out of place or doesn't fit it. Most of the boss themes are fantastic as well. And when you're fighting, you can really sort of focus in on it, and I think that's pretty good. I think that's a hallmark of really good design. And when it comes to the puzzles, well, they aren't, you know, the most extremely complicated thing ever. I'll put them on the level of Lego puzzles, you know. Everybody can figure them out if they try. These are not like super insane big brain puzzles, but they aren't really easy either. They're like on the side of, I really enjoy completing these. Like, I am not gonna get frustrated by doing this. And while yes, there was a couple of times that they get stuck, admittedly, mainly because the game has a tendency of having you backtrack to areas you have been to before to find items for a puzzle that is going on in another area, and you can't pick them up beforehand, which can be sort of annoying. But other than that, there really isn't a whole lot to complain about. Ravenlok is a really fun time, even though it is only 4 hours. And that being said, I think it's also important to mention how it comes together, you know, how's the vibe in the game. And the vibe in the game is really good. Like, you're always finding something, doing something, there's always something for you to do. Meanwhile, the game overall is just super aesthetically pleasing and cute. Whether it's the enemy animations, or the enemies themselves, which usually are really unique, especially in the later levels. Like, they are stuff you haven't seen before. Some of them come straight out of Alice from Wonderland though. Like, I've seen the guard, like the guard that is literally just a card is straight out of that. And you know what? The fuck it, I'm here for it. I think that's pretty neat. I think that's a really cool idea, and I think it does it in a really unique way, which is what is super important. Because most games nowadays does not have a lock camera. They aren't just heavy button smashers. They aren't no-brainers. You have to like really be focused on some of them. Look at Elden Ring, look at Dark Souls, right? You have to be there for them. But with Ravenlok, you can sort of just boot it up, play it and have fun, and like turn off your brain. And I think that's something that we sort of miss these days, that we don't really get in the industry anymore. And I think that's really cool to see it return somewhat with Ravenlok. And it's also why I can recommend it. And obviously you do what I did and just buy a Game Pass subscription for $5 to play it. That's what I'd recommend. It's really good. I really like Ravenlok. So that's pretty much it for Ravenlok. Like, Ravenlok is really interesting in that regard. I think it comes together pretty well. And I think if you look at it individually, it wouldn't be as good. But if you look at the entire package and the way things come together, I think it's really, really good. It's a high recommend for me. If you're sticking around from here on out, you'll just be listening to me sort of rant a little bit and talk about the future of the channel, what I want to cover, like I always do, etc. in all of my videos out like that. So that's gonna be it for now. If you aren't gonna stick around for it, thank you for watching. I of course enjoy that. If you wanna, you can leave a sub. If you don't worry about it. I am just happy that you've spent a little bit of time with me. So, going into the rest. Alright, we have multiple games I actually want to cover. System Shock Remake is one of them, but I've also been recommended a game called Valhalla and another one called the Red String Club, which I've actually heard of the Red String Club. It was they're both supposed to be sort of similar to coffee talks, which I enjoyed. So I will probably be covering them. And Mo Astray, which is supposed to be somewhat similar to Iconoclast, which is all just something I want to cover at that point. Like I want to give them all a go and, you know, see what's all about. And that will be coming in the following weeks. I'll also want to make a video on specifically Ghost of the Deep, the new dungeon in Destiny, but I also want to talk about at some point what it means to be a Souls-like. Like, that's also something that I have on my mind. Like, I have a bunch of stuff I want to make, and I'm not sure if I'll have the time for it all, but at the very least, these videos will keep coming weekly. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're sticking around. If you watched this, thank you. Like, a lot for just hearing me out. I appreciate it, man. Have a good night for me. It's almost 2 AM, and I'll go to bed. Good night.